Go for Side Effects is sponsored by Wild Branch Products. Wild Branch is a truly pure cannabis oil. They make CBD containing 0.00% THC and no carrier oils. Use Wild Branch oils and salves to calm, cool, and soothe your body, leaving you pain-free. I put on a salve. I used the oils. I was able to walk for hours. I believe in this product 100%. Use promo code GWI podcast for 15% off. Use promo code GWI podcast for 15% off. Click the link below. Thank you. So, everybody, Virginia Cruse, she has a book that's out. I'm going to let her talk about that, but she is a soldier / now sailor, retired veteran who has gotten out and is going for her PhD. And she is a combat therapist, and she's a therapist. So today's going to be really cool because I've kind of gotten to listen to a little bit of what you've done before, but let's talk about your book and dig right into this.
Oh, thank you so much, Kevin. And thanks, John. Thank you guys for having me on. I really love your show. And I love how you advocate for Gulf War veterans.
Thank you.
I'll start off by reading an introduction, and that might give all your listeners a trigger warning also.
Yeah.
Just in case, because that never hurts. But I'm going to go ahead and read the introduction to The Soldier's Guide to PTSD for you. So it starts off like this. Dear soldier, so we don't know each other. I only know that you've picked up this book and for the moment you're reading it. I appreciate that because talking about PTSD, kind of my thing. After my third deployment, I was definitely not okay and nobody knew how to help me. My chain of command, my doctors, my family, or me. I worked harder to get better and made a lot of mistakes along the way. Eventually, I got my master's degree in mental health counseling and I started teaching troops. I am convinced that when we know the no shit facts about PTSD, we make more informed choices and get better faster. I'm going to write this book directly to you as if you were sitting in my class. Now, my classes can be uncomfortable. PTSD is an unpleasant topic and people don't like to talk about it. I get that, but that's not good for us. Your life is at stake, my friend, and I am not about to fuck around. I intend to be as straightforward as I know how to, because I know that PTSD can kill you. We're going to talk about suicide, war crimes, depression, relationships, and a lot more. See, I'm one of those therapists who came to the profession later in life, and I'm not here to waste any time. I'm going to teach you everything that I wish I knew when I was starting my own journey. And while you're not going to like it, probably what you need to hear. I know that PTSD is an ass kicker, and I realize you might not be up to reading a book right now, but maybe you could try this one. I'll keep it short. Another reason I wrote this book is that many service members know they have PTSD, but they don't know what to do about it. Maybe we believe lies like PTSD never goes away. We continue to feel hopeless. This book might find its way into the hands of someone who never knew help was there, and it may show them where to find it. One last thing. I swear a bit, and I want to say that up front because a lot of folks are uncomfortable with coarse language, and that is completely okay. I respect it, and this is not the right book for you. I don't swear because I'm trying to be cool or provocative, and I'm not trying to hurt your feelings or make you feel sad on the inside. Not swearing is inauthentic for me, and because nothing less than your life is at stake, I will not apologize for what I have to say. There's a lot of great guides out there for civilians and clinicians, but this book's for service members. It's from one soldier to another. It's from me to you. Because if someone had given me this book back in 2005, it would have saved me years of bullshit. Yours sincerely, Virginia Cruse.
I love that. It's true. One thing about it is I don't put a disclaimer on language. So just let everybody know. I'll let you say what you want to say. That's what this podcast is about. I want everybody to come on here, feel comfortable, do whatever they got to do. But you are right about one thing. When you go to the VA, all they do is either pump you full of drugs and they listen to you, but they only give you a short amount of time. They don't give you the full amount of time for the counseling, for doctor visits, for anything. And let every one of y'all know, y'all are also talking to 3 tours in the Gulf right here. So you're not talking to some therapist that just wanted to learn about it. She's experienced it. And that's the key thing. And I know, well, I don't know, but I do understand it is tougher for a woman to be in the military than it is a man, especially back in the 90s, and which I understand that. But I want you to go through and talk about what your therapy sessions are about, and how can my listeners relate to what you have gone through.
Thank you. Thank you for saying all that, Kevin. And thank you for acknowledging that being a woman in the military is bullshit a lot of the time. The first time that I sought, you're right, I had to learn all of this the hard way. And the first time I ever sought mental health help was in 2008. It was after my 3rd tour in Iraq, and I was voluntold to go to mental health. I lived in Germany at the time, and I was not doing okay. I was drinking all the time. I was blowing up my perfectly great marriage, good relationships, friendships. I was crying constantly, and I was consistently suicidal every single day. I knew something was wrong with me, and I didn't know what it was. And back then, we didn't really talk about PTSD. It wasn't an acronym that was in my vernacular. Had a lot of other acronyms, but not that one. And so I went to see a military mental health professional, full bird colonel. It's a slick sleeve, which is something that we say in the Army for someone who doesn't have a combat patch. So this was a full bird colonel, 06 type Army, active duty. And I was so thrilled to be there because I knew something was wrong and I didn't know what it was. And I poured my heart out, Kevin. I poured my heart out for the better part of 50 minutes for that 50-minute hour, because I really needed help. And at the end of that time, he eyeballed me and he said, Virginia, I can tell that you are really not doing well, and I would like to help you, but I can't if you choose not to be honest with me. I was a little confused by that. So I asked him to clarify, and he said, Virginia, we all know women don't serve in combat, and there is nothing I can do to help you unless you choose to be honest with me.
Dick comment.
That was a dick move. Yeah. And thank you for saying that so bluntly. And and I hate to say it, but this is an experience that many of us have had. It was the equivalent of being kicked while I was down, brothers. Let me tell you what. I was already suicidal. I was already not okay. And that was the kick in the teeth that I absolutely did not need.
Yeah, here, let's pour some more salt in it for you there. Jesus.
I'm a salty bitch already, I'm telling you. And I was not okay. And you know what though, John, I got to tell you, this isn't a cool origin story, but it was at that moment that I realized that if I don't figure this shit out, I'm going to die. I'm going to no shit die from this. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I was going to kill myself, that something not okay was about to happen. And so I did the thing that I knew how to best do, and that was go to school. And so I went back to grad school, and, here I am, I don't do math in public, 14 years later, I'm here with you now. And I'm a licensed therapist, and I specialize in combat trauma. And I'm really passionate about giving other service members the no shit facts about PTSD. Because unfortunately, so many of us have gone to mental health professionals and been kicked in the teeth, or been told our time was up, or not really listened to. And that is not okay. And when it comes to PTSD, the rumor mill is just so incredibly rampant. And, I spend a lot of time in the Soldier's Guide to PTSD and in our Recover from PTSD series that's available on Amazon. We talk a lot about what are the rumors about PTSD that are absolutely not true, but really fuck with your head. And these are rumors, not that I've just heard from service members, but these are rumors that I've heard from other licensed clinicians, some of them VA clinicians, some of them private clinicians, who their job is to treat service members like us. And the most prevalent rumor that I've heard is that, PTSD is really reserved, that it's reserved for combat troops. And within the military, and let me even be more Pacific as opposed to being Atlantic, since we got a Navy guy here, within the military, not just somebody who's experienced combat, but somebody who's a door knocker, who's a bell ringer, somebody who is a trigger puller, badass mother trucker, who has gone out SEAL Team 6 style and kitted up and knocked down doors. And that somehow PTSD is reserved for those who deserve it. And I'm putting that in air quotes for a reason, because if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, this year, I would have a couple dollars. And that is just fundamentally not how PTSD works. It's just not how it works. So the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, version 5, and I mentioned that specifically. It's a big purple book, or the 5TR, text revision just came out last month. It's a big purple book that should be on your therapist shelf. Came out in 2013. And I need your listeners to hear that, especially your Gulf War veterans, to hear this, because the definition of trauma was changed significantly after the version 5 came out in 2013. So if any of your listeners had a diagnosis prior to 2013, might be time for a do-over, might be time for another C&P exam, because shit has changed for real. And the DSM, it defines all mental health disorders. And within that, it talks about PTSD. So P, post, after. T, trauma. So trauma is defined as actual or threatened exposure to death, serious injury, or sexual violence. That is a big umbrella, friends. So P, T, S, stress. That's your body and your brain's very natural reaction to a very unnatural set of circumstances. And disorder, a lot of folks take exception to the word disorder. They're like, no, it's not a disease. And it's the word disorder, it's clinical. It just means that your symptoms are fucking up your walking, talking, everyday life. They are affecting you to the point where you can't function as a dad, as a husband, as a worker. You can't go to the Walmart or the supermarket without starting a fist fight because someone doesn't put their cart back, which I support. But it's getting in the way. It's getting in the way of your walking, talking, everyday life. So when we talk about trauma, when I say let me get back to the DSM, because we've got a book for this. We've got a manual for this. Actual or threatened exposure to death, serious injury, or sexual violence. That is a huge umbrella. That doesn't just cover folks who are trigger pullers. That is covering folks who are on ships. That is covering folks with Gulf War illness who came back after getting their vaccinations. They don't know what's happening to them, or they're being gaslit by their doctor saying, it's probably all in your head. Maybe not. They're, being trafficked, being raped, being abused. This umbrella is so large. And to say that, go ahead, John.
Let me ask you this, Virginia. So,
me, brother.
As you know, on September, or not September, my apologies, May 11th of this year, the medical information came out from Southwest Texas University.
Yeah.
About the sarin gas, and this is a government sponsored study. And why was it that when we all read that, those of us that served in the Gulf and already knew it was there, why did that piss us off so much more?
So that, I love your question. Kevin, did you plant that question just for me? All right. Well, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take that as my softball gift, John. That's what we call a triggering event. Yeah, that definitely should piss you off. So there is a wonderful researcher. She's out of the University of Oregon. Her name is Jennifer Freyd, F-R-E-Y as in Yankee, D as in Delta. And she studies something called institutional betrayal. Really famous. She's probably best known for the Darvo model. So institutional betrayal, she really looks at things like military sexual trauma, MST, so prevalent it gets its own acronym now. She looks at rape within the college, university systems, and she's most known for Darvo. So that's victim. Darvo. So something reverse the victim and the accuser. Gosh, yeah, the acronym will come to me immediately when I don't need it, but Darvo, D-A-R-V-O. So she talks a lot about institutional betrayal and what a kick in the teeth it is when a large institution really is taking that information, and yeah, not a surprise to any of you who were there, not a surprise to any of you who have, who are reading it or who follow it in the news, but what a kick in the teeth. And yeah, it should piss you off. That is a major triggering event. When I was
not to interrupt, but yeah, no, I read it. Of course, you've probably read or at least are aware of the book that came out, in 97, Gas in the Gulf, and that I had shared with Kevin. And not that I needed to read that to know, I already knew because of the M8 alarms and all this. It's just like, and I was just showing, actually, to be quite honest with you, I was showing my therapist because she was unaware of this information. And she was reading it and was like, huh. I mean, I don't blame her because she wasn't aware of it. And I said, yeah, it didn't make the news. Kevin and I both submitted information because we were like, this came out on the 11th, and what better opportunity to put this information to the forefront for Memorial Day. Memorial Day isn't for the living. We all understand that. It's for the men and women that lost their lives protecting our country, right? But this is one of the things that took the lives, or partially responsible. Let me phrase it like that, because as Wade had stated, the VA would like this to be somewhat of a blanket, and it's not a blanket. It's only a part of the issues. It is an issue that has been acknowledged, not necessarily by the VA, because in the fine print at the bottom of this study, in the terminology that was used, basically the VA isn't acknowledging yada yada yada, even though it was the very study was paid for through our government. And you read this, and it's information we kind of already knew to a degree. When I say information that we know, meaning that yes, we know there's WMD. And we know we're exposed to it. Uncle Sam will beat all around the bush and doesn't want to acknowledge that because that costs them money in the long run. So anyway, yeah, it really pissed me off when I read that. Just like when I watch anything on TV and anything related to that part of the Gulf, and they want to bring up WMDs, and they say, the journalists, who I don't necessarily blame the journalists, but I kind of got to, because they're the ones that just said they weren't there. And I'm like, whoa, time out. And I'll be sitting there going off the deep end. And my wife's like, John, calm down. I'm like, well, if you're going to throw out information, let's have factual information and not bullshit. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you're going to spew stuff, let's spew the correct stuff and not hypothetical and what's your opinion. Although I understand that's how news agency make their living because it's their edited version of what they want you to hear. So, but anyway, I lost my train of thought. Something. Sorry.
No, I love that you're passionate about it. You have every right to be bent, John. I mean, that's absolute bullshit. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, kind of shame on your therapist too. For those of us who specialize in military mental health issues, I'm required as a licensed professional counselor, I'm required to do continuing education credits to keep my state licensing every year. It is because I serve this community, it is on me to educate myself about military issues like burn pits, Camp Lejeune, to know about sarin gas, to know what PTSD is, to know what moral injury is, to be able to talk about suicide, and not just for my knowledge to be PowerPoint deep.
Yeah, no, I have a phenomenal therapist. I think she is extraordinarily good at what she does. And she had a lot of personal things that happened in her life. And this information hasn't come out that long ago. So I mean, I have no complaints. She is phenomenal. And this information, this particular article hasn't been out there. And because of the things that happen in her private life, we all have this thing called life, right? And sometimes you're not going to catch up on everything, right? So, I mean, I just made her aware of it, and she was very appreciative. I have no complaints about my therapist. I think she's phenomenal at what she does. So I don't want this to sound like I'm throwing her under bus. Not at all. No, I have nothing but positive things. She's helped me tremendously. And I got a lot more, as the saying might go, there's a lot more work to be had. But I mean, so anyway, I didn't want that to come across as I was just, did you know this? And she's like, no. And she was clicking on it. And at first she couldn't bring it up. And I thought, I would go to hell. The VA's got her locked out of information. And it eventually came up. But it was like, you don't know what you don't know. And there it is.
Well, I think, I mean, for me, it isn't the fact that they came out with the new sarin gas. The part that pisses me off is our politicians. They all suck. I'll be the first ones to say it out loud. All the way from every president, all the way down, I don't give a crap who it is, the housing people. That they're not out admitting what they did to us. And I think that's where a lot of Gulf War veterans are hurting. Because we are a forgotten war. And
very much.
Yeah. So how would you relate with talking with them about, when they're dealing with that stuff? Because I talk to veterans all the time who are just heartbroken.
Mm-hmm. I really think it's up to us to lead the way. Yeah, some of the best therapists I know were, enlisted officers before. There are a lot of us who are now researchers or in PhD programs or in master's programs or becoming social workers. And it really is up to us to start this conversation, because I think you're right, Kevin. I don't think politicians, I don't know if there's an appetite writ large to talk about war crimes, toxic gases, militarized rape, male-on-male rape within the service, military sexual assault. I don't know if there's much of an appetite to talk about that. Suicide. We talk about up 22 a day. How come we say 22 a day and everybody knows what that means, but we're not really talking about it? I think it's up to us as veterans to start leading the harder conversations and to really start talking about what it is and what it's not. When talking with Gulf War vets or with our Vietnam brothers and sisters, I wasn't in Vietnam. I don't see Charlie in the foxhole, but I get that they were spit on and that they were really disrespected when they came back. I get that the Ukrainian war right now is really triggering a lot of folks. I get, I'm very close to Uvalde where I live here. I'm on the South Texas border. And I've had a lot of veterans come in for the very first time who, very first time they've, have never been seen for mental health. And this is their breaking point. There are a lot of us who are reaching our breaking point. And how do we have an honest, real conversation about this? How do we talk about what PTSD, what it's not? How do we get real help? Is the knowledge PowerPoint deep, or do we really know how to fix this? When it comes to PTSD, and when I really started deep diving into this, I think what really pissed me off the most was knowing that we've had solutions to PTSD for decades. The Department of Veteran Affairs authorizes 3 evidence-based treatments for PTSD. So in evidence-based treatments, they are tested. So these treatment models are tested very much in the same way that a vaccine is tested or drugs are tested. So these are double-blind, longitudinal studies over the course of decades. And in this case, they have been tested in terms of, tens of thousands of service members. And the Department of, the VA itself has approved 3 of these evidence-based treatments. And that's prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy, and what we call EMDR. That's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a mouthful, so we just gave it that acronym, EMDR. And that doesn't mean that there are only 3 solutions for PTSD. There are several. And amazing researchers, especially, shout out to my brothers and sisters up at StrongStar, UT Health Science Center, PTSD, DOD Research Center for Excellence for PTSD Research, right up in San Antonio, Texas. We know what works, and we know that they work quickly. So each of these 3 evidence-based treatments really works between 10 and 15 sessions. That means that if you are seeing a therapist weekly, the science shows us that it works for most people most of the time, and it does so in about 3 months. Meaning that if somebody has, the symptoms are at a point of being a disorder, that's the D of PTSD, that in the course of 10 to 15 sessions, we expect, and the science tells us, that most of these symptoms will go down to a reasonable level where people can function again in their roles. But what happens is we go to, when it comes to PTSD research, I almost feel like we've got a lot of people running around with their puzzle pieces. Like, I got a piece of the puzzle. You got those fucking horse therapy people, and you've got, you've got the group therapy people, and you've got, we can do ayahuasca, and we know what, we've got all these folks running around with these puzzle pieces, and it's like, no, we know what works. And because those three evidence-based treatments are approved by the VA, they're pretty ubiquitous, meaning that they are offered at almost every military treatment center. They're offered at every VA behavioral health program, and we can ask for them by name.
Is an hour the standard quo for when you have a therapist talk to you?
Yeah.
Is an hour about standard?
It really depends. Hours about right, between 50 minutes and 60 minutes.
So what happens when you go in? Let me ask you this. What happens when you go in and you got a whole lot of things on your mind, and you don't know if it's one thing or a combination of things, and you spend half an hour, 40 minutes talking about that, and then your therapist turns around. What are they supposed to, if it's not, let's say it's a couple of weeks in between, and I'm sure, there's obviously a lot of people that need assistance. When you start talking, because your job as therapist, you got to listen to what we have to feed you, and then you got to figure out in your training as to how to answer our questions. Or, I've asked my therapist point blank, and I look at her and I just ask, "Am I wrong?" And she'll go, Yep. I'm like, well, son of a bitch. Why am I wrong? You know?
Okay.
And so if that, I'm kind of getting into particulars when I will say, I have an opinion about a family member. Is that thought process wrong? And then they'll say yes and explain it. But then we don't necessarily get down to the meat and potatoes as to why I'm thinking all this,
Okay.
you know? So
Great question. So yes and no. So your first session, and this is really great. I'm so glad that you're asking this because a lot of service members are really afraid. What's going to happen when I go into therapy? Am I going to be on a couch? Am I going to be talking about my mommy issues? Because I'm not there. So when it comes to PTSD, no, you won't be talking about your mommy issues for the most part. And that's because it doesn't help. It's not an evidence-based treatment. So standard talk therapy, just yap it, get a friend, go to the American Legion. So when it comes to an evidence-based treatment, they're very highly structured. So the first time that you meet with a therapist, you're going to do something called an intake. It's about 90 minutes long. And it's 90 minutes long because for a lot of people, it's their first time ever talking with a therapist. And that's terrifying. And you got a lot of stuff you need to get out. So as the intake therapist, who might not be the same person as your therapist, their job is to get a lot of information, rack and stack. So to triage all that information, and then to work with you to come up with a treatment plan or to figure out, okay, what do we want to work on first? What do we want to work on second? And so they're going to be getting a lot of information. But if I'm sitting there and I'm just letting you go on and on and on, and I'm not guiding that, I'm not really doing my job. You could do that with a friend. You could do that with a dog. You could do that on a blog. My job is to get you on track. So I will be, I'll be asking you questions about your mental health history, about your military history, about your family history. I'm going to be asking, I'm going to be doing all sorts of measures. I'm going to be asking you about suicide attempts. I'm going to be asking you about your anxiety, your PTSD symptoms, your depression symptoms. I'm going to be getting a lot of information. I'm going to say, okay, John, so we've been here for the last 90 minutes. And what I have heard you say is that you're really struggling with PTSD symptoms that sound a lot like PTSD. But I'm also hearing that a front burner issue for you is your anxiety because you're not able to leave the house. And so here's what I'm wondering. What would you like to focus on for this episode of care, for the next 10 weeks? What do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus, because we got roots and fruits when it comes to PTSD. So PTSD is what we call a co-occurring disorder. That means PTSD is a real joiner. It always comes to the party with friends. So we see most often with PTSD, with military-related PTSD, we see drug and alcohol abuse, depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorders, what we call OCD, and we see eating disorders, so binging, purging, anorexia. And this is especially for men and especially for special warfare folks. See it? Those are kind of my big five that I see all the time. So what I'll say is, John, I'm seeing these problems. And what I'm wondering is, because at the end of the day, I'm the expert in psychology, but brother, you're the expert in you. What is it that you would like to work on first? And you might say, you know what? I really need to quit drinking because if I get another DUI, I'm going to prison. Or you might say, you know what? I really need to get a hold of this depression because I want to kill myself every freaking day. Or you might say, you know what? I need to work on my marriage because I'm picking fights with my spouse and I need to make this work and I can't figure it out. You're driving the train. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Then I'm going to say, okay. So I'm hearing you say, I'm going to reflect it because that's what therapists do. I say, no, I'm hearing you say is that you really want to work on your drug and alcohol abuse. You say, yes. And I say, okay. You're driving the train. That's where we're going. So for the next 10 sessions, that's what we're doing. And if you want to switch course, you need to let me know because I am full steam ahead. And then for the next 10 sessions, that's what we're going to work on. And if you're like, yeah, I've been drinking a lot this week, but I really want to talk about this cut on my finger, I'm going to be like, fuck no, stop. We are going to refocus. We are going to get back in the saddle and we are going to talk about whether we're going to talk about your drug and alcohol use, or do we need to shift our focus? Do we need to change our treatment plan? Do we need to work on something new, or do we need to stick to the original plan? 9 times out of 10, my client's going to say, you know what? I want to stick to the original plan because this is still a front burner issue for me. Now I'll say, okay, at the end of session, we're going to do 50 sessions. We're going to work on what we're working, 50 minutes. We're going to work on what we're working on, not 50 sessions, calm down. But we'll do, 50 minutes. And then if we've got time left, tell me about this. But if we don't have time left, we're going to leave it for another day. Is that okay?
So Kevin, when you're talking to men and women on a daily basis, are they able to, when they're talking about stuff that's bothering them from the military, are they able to
elaborate
start
on
a conversation and end a conversation within a short time frame? I suck at that.
Some are, some aren't, and everything. A lot of them, when they talk about their stuff that they're doing with PTSD that I talk to, it always relates to how it affects their family life, their kids, their spouse, their brothers, mom, dad, sister, cousins, it doesn't matter, their friends. And that's kind of what I try to focus on with family members also on here, is that y'all have no idea what they're going through. But I also believe they need the counseling also. And so I'll let you elaborate on that for me.
For sure. John, to answer your question, my job's to drive the train in that 50 minutes and to make sure that we don't bite off more than we can chew. So I've got to keep my scope narrow. We're not going to solve the world in 50 minutes.
Really?
We're going to solve. I know. Most of the time, but not always. But a big part of my job also is to say, you know what? I'm seeing that there are a lot of other things here that are really bothering you. Let's look at the vet center for getting your family some therapy. Let's look at also, while you're doing this one-on-one counseling with me, let's also get you in with a marriage counselor so you can work on that in tandem. It might be, you know what? You are dealing with some really heavy issues right now that are really spiritually based. I am thinking especially of the shooting in Uvalde. Let's hook you up with the chaplain. Let's get you talking to your faith leader.
Yeah, I struggle, when we're talking about what just recent happened, the shooting. And it's like, if a person chooses to watch the news, it's like, it's a blame game. It's this, it's that. I'm like, you can't undo what you did. And it was a horrific thing that happened. And, everybody thinks, well, we got to change all the laws. And I'm like, wait a second. Why don't we incorporate this thing called mental health and make it more available to the people in our country? Because I have family members that struggle in that area, and there's not enough of it. You need mental health. And let's face our world right now. Our world's kind of not so great. Yeah, if you're not, even the people who are making a lot of money, you got to spend money, right? I don't care what you're doing. You want to drive, you got to put fuel in a car. That costs a lot of money. And you can say, well, we're going to blame everything on the fuel price. We're going to blame everything on this or everything like that. And what you provide, as far as trying to wrap your head around it, what it is the person's thinking, when us veterans, I don't know about other veterans. I've talked to a lot of them. obvious. I mean, and you do it I mean, you talk to people all the time and trying to get inside what it is that's going on in that brain of theirs.
Mhm.
And they need help. And the people that don't know they necessarily need help, maybe their buddy maybe their friend across the hallway who's struggling too, maybe they know they need help, and they should be able to go and get this help easily. But unfortunately, it's getting worse and worse in our United States. And you can take all the guns off the street if that was even something that was even plausible. That ain't going to fix the issue, because if somebody wants to hurt somebody, they're going to figure out a way to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, especially within mental health and when we're dealing one-on-one in our own personal therapy sessions. We can get real wrapped around the axle about what should be going on and how things should change, and we should all over ourselves. That's not really helpful. I think it's important, especially within our one-on-one therapy session, is to get very myopic and to say, you know what is it that I can personally affect and change?
What'd you say?
Myopic. So we got to get super hyper focused. What is within my control?
Dumb it down for me.
I got you, bro. I got you. I love the serenity prayer. My favorite version of it is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know that that is me. That is me. That at the end of the day, the only thing that I can control is me. The only thing you can control is you. There's not a lot that we can do to change everything writ large overnight. But we can certainly get really worked up about it and really fuck up our day. And really and lose a lot of sleep and really affect our own mental health. It's hard. And I'm not saying that we just need to lay down and accept school shootings or, wars with Russia. But I am saying that, maybe a better focus and a better use of our time is to say, okay, how can I change myself? How can I change my own thought patterns? How can I react when I'm triggered? How can I change my own family? When I'm sitting with a client, I think, something I'm always thinking about when I meet with a veteran or with an active duty service member for the first time is to stop for the one. For me, I can get really wrapped up and say, you know what, I should be doing talks and I could write more books. But at the end of the day, I've got one person in front of me who needs help. And I can stop for that one person and let them know that they deserve to be loved and honored and respected and valued, and to give them that one-on-one time and to detangle what is going on and to actually help them in their walking, talking, everyday life. We can't unfuck a lot of things out there. We just can't, or we can't do it quickly. I'm not saying that change doesn't happen, because change, every good thing that's ever happened in the United States started with people being really pissed off.
Yes.
From the Tea Party to civil rights, you name it. It started with us being really angry and taking action.
Well,
but
you made a good point there, and Kevin was just being forthright, talking about politicians. Politicians have a tendency to, talk everything to death. I'm going to tell you everything you want to hear. I know you want to hear that I'm all that in a bag of chips. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why don't you do your damn job, what you were put into office to do? Stop trying to, pad your back pocket and make your family and get reelected. So you keep on putting money in your pocket and life is grand for you. And you got all these health benefits and everything else. Well, the very people you're talking to, okay, I got elected, now piss off. Now I'm going to,
I think this is the way I look at life. I guess, I used to tell my chaplain this, and he sent me down for a psych evaluation for it. But I tell him life's like a flower. That I would always, when I was on the ship, that was my saying. And he's like, what in the hell are you talking about, Simon? I said, think about it. You start out this beautiful little seed and you grow into a beautiful flower. But on that way, you're being spit on, shit on, pissed on, walked on, kicked on, and then you grow old and you die. It's the same thing with life. To me, I don't want to watch the news 24/7. I don't want to get involved in that anymore. I want to watch what things that are going to make me happy. And I think that's how we need to change things. Because to me, you can only help you first and then help the others around you. And if everybody would just put one foot forward and open the door for each other and say, have a great day, you change somebody's life.
I love that. And, Kevin, this show does a great job of answering the question, what can I do? You put together this show for other Gulf War vets to teach, to open that door for other people. Maybe not the physical door like what you're talking about, but really figuratively to open that door and to say, hey, or to guide people like you're doing, John, to say, what, this is how you get that service connection. This, or, here's an article that was just released that tells you more about sarin gas. Or, I talk with folks all the time on our Facebook page, at the Soldier's Guide, our Facebook page, or on our blog at thesoldiersblog.com, talking with individuals and answering individual questions and saying, what you're going through, pretty normal. Those are pretty normal symptoms for PTSD. That doesn't mean it tickles, but it means that it's pretty normal. And here's how you get help. What you guys do here on this podcast and in your individual lives is you're stopping for the one person. You're stopping for the one and saying, here's the way, walk in it. Let me show you what worked for me.
Yeah.
Let me stop.
No, I like that. And kudos to Wade, because Wade will often mention helping one person at a time. And Kevin, I like that. I had never heard it quite phrased like that, a flower. That makes complete sense. And Virginia, I like the way you phrased it earlier. We were talking, you say, we got to put, what'd you say? You said something about putting something on the front burner. Like what's really, what's your main thing here? What do we really want to focus on? And my therapist, and she has done that good, but I have a tendency to start talking about all these other things, and she's doing her job listening to me and has to, compile all that and then come back after I finally shut my damn mouth and tell me, okay, John, let's concentrate on this. We're not going to fix all this all at once. I mean, and she's quite frank, but always in a purposeful way. She isn't telling me what I need, what I want to hear. She's telling me what I need to hear and the right things that I need to hear to fix my mind. And she will always say, John, be mindful. And that kind of pisses me off when she does that. But I know it's a fair statement. Doesn't mean I gotta like it. I don't like driving freaking 55 on the highway. But guess what? There's a penalty if I drive faster, and that penalty is, hey, you're going to pay a hefty fine because you were a dumbass and wanted a challenge and you lost your challenge. I mean, same.
I mean, it goes for everything. I mean, I think with me, Virginia, when you're talking about having faith, and to me, how I was brought up and how I've learned it over the years. Put God first, put yourself, everything falls in a line. And that's how I look at life. I look at life as I put my faith first, and then me, and then God down. It doesn't mean everybody's going to believe in what I believe in. I'm not going to push it on anybody. I want everybody to have their own beliefs. But you got to have something you believe in besides yourself. And I do believe that. And I think that's, believe in therapy, believe in, a wife, believe in your kids, however much you can, but believe in your kids. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry if my children just heard me say that. I don't want to get in trouble.
You gotta want to. I mean, you gotta want to fix yourself. You gotta want to move forward, right? And I think my brother used that term, or maybe I was telling him. I get a little tired when we need to move forward. I got a little tired of that. It's a bullshit phrase, but it is and it's not. It's like, well, we're going backwards. Well, there is such a thing as going backwards, because if your thought process isn't being positive and always negative, i.e. not watching all the negative news, because news is negativity, that is drama. That's what guides a lot of their ratings, which keeps paychecks to people, right? Drama. I freaking hate drama. I mean, well, that unless I'm going to watch it intentionally for entertainment purposes.
Days of our lives, brother. Days of our lives. The bold and the beautiful. I cannot believe I'm saying that on the freaking air.
My wife will tell me, those are daytime dramas. You like nighttime soap operas. And I thought, you're full of shit. But I thought, no, that's a fair statement. Because, for example, if you want to watch a Chicago PD or something along that, what is that? That's a nighttime soap opera drama. It's the same different. We're just not talking about
fire.
What most people think is a soap opera, right? It's a different type. Is that a fair analogy, Virginia?
I'll tell you the truth. I got one amazing husband, one terrible dog, and that's all the drama I need in my life. I go very far out of my way to practice serenity, because I need it. I need it to be able to survive. And I love what you're saying here. One of the greatest bits of feedback that I get on the book from readers on our blog and on our Facebook page, on the Soldier's Guide Facebook page, is comments on what we call the big two. And those are the big two questions that we have to be able to ask and answer for ourselves before we can get any help. And I'll put it into context. So the first question is, do you believe that change is possible? Do we believe? Now, that's a really interesting question, because the science is really clear. Whether we believe something is true or not, we're right. If we believe that therapy won't help me, then I'm right. If I believe that I can't lose weight, then I'm right. if I believe that, but our belief systems, our fundamental belief systems. So in terms of PTSD, we have to ask ourselves, do you believe it's possible that you could get to a point where you're not feeling suicidal every day? Do you believe that it's possible that you could use an evidence-based treatment for your PTSD and reduce your symptoms? Do you believe it's possible that you could be the dad you want to be? Do you even believe that's possible? And the funny thing about beliefs is, I could, one thing I hear, I could wake up tomorrow and the sky could be green and the grass could be blue. Anything's possible. Anything's possible. So, we say, do you believe that's possible? And then the second question is, do you want to change? And that is not an easy question to ask and answer, if we're being real honest, because we have to ask ourselves, am I willing to do whatever it takes to get to this point? Am I willing to talk authentically with a therapist, someone I've never met before, and share my deepest, darkest secret with them? Am I willing to write out a trauma narrative that describes my feelings? Am I willing to do therapeutic homework in between sessions so that I'm not just going and talking at every session, but I'm actually working in between? Am I willing to do the work that it's going to take? Because therapy ain't easy. This shit ain't easy, but it's not forever either. It's not forever. It's, like I said, 10 and 15 sessions. 12 sessions is your sweet spot. That's 3 months, 3 to 4 months. That's cake compared to some of our Vietnam brothers who've been seeing Charlie in the foxhole 60 fucking years, man. That is, and it works. And the science is clear that it works. And what kills us about the big two, or what kills me, I'll just speak about me personally, is, whenever I have somebody come into my office, I have to ask some version of the big two, do you believe change is possible for you? Do you believe that? Because I may know the science and I may know the literature and I may write books about it. And I may know it's possible, but it doesn't matter what I think. And at the end of the day, are you willing to do the work? And, and it's a killer because we see our kids, our adult children, sometimes minor children, spouses, battle buddies, friends, shipmates, and we see them blowing up their relationships and their families and their congregations and their units and their workplaces. And we see their lives going to absolute shit. And we know that they deserve better. We know that if they could just hit that rock bottom and go to AA, or if they could just go to a therapist and talk with someone, if they could just do what I'm suggesting. And at the end of the day, and I have to tell this to family members all the time, and it breaks my fucking heart in two, because, and those of you who, and John, you had said you have family members who struggle with mental health, and it is heartbreaking to watch people you love and honor and value, respect and cherish struggling with something that can be fixed. It can be fixed.
But you can sometimes,
and
sometimes
you can't help.
You talk to whether it's a family member, others, and like you're saying, they've got to want to fix it. It's like, for example, if a person smokes cigarettes and they've been doing it for years and years and years and years and years, you can talk until you're blue in the face. They've got to want themselves to quit smoking that cigarette. I think I'm bad with names. Kevin, the gal that was on a short time ago, and she made the comment, there's, 3,000 to 5,000 chemicals in a cigarette. That's a ton of crap going into your body. And you're addicted to that nicotine. And so I've heard in Virginia, we're kind of off subject here, but yet not really. You want to get away from that addiction problem, you got to want to fix it. Do I want to keep on thinking about the bad shit that happened to me when I was in war? I.e., do I want to keep on listening to negativity on the news? No, but I want to stay updated. Well, maybe watch an abbreviated news broadcast, or pick a different way to listen to the information. You've got to want to help yourself. I can't do it for you. I always tell my kids that. I can't, whatever's negative going on in your life, you've got to want that change. I can guide. My kids, I always tell them, I can guide and advise. I can't fix the problem. You got to want to fix the problem.
It sucks. Oh, it hurts. And I think the hardest part of my job is talking to family members who they call me and they're like, Virginia, can you just talk with my husband, my dad, my son, my daughter? Can you just talk to them one time? Because I know that when they talk to you, they will want to get help for their drug addiction, PTSD, alcoholism, depression. And I have to tell them with so much empathy and so much love, because I know it hurts. No. And I tell them, with love, I'm going to advise you to stand down, because this is crazy making. It's crazy making, because that you have no control over anyone else's belief system. Sometimes we can influence.
I haven't heard that term in a long time, but stand down. Yeah, God, that sucks to have to do that too.
For our sanity. Our sanity. There's a wonderful organization. It's called CODA, Codependence Anonymous. And I'm not saying that that everybody who has a loved one with an illness needs to go to CODA. what an amazing organization. They're available, the whole 12-step community. The only good thing about pandemic, entire 12-step community has gone online. Yeah, and you can go to coda.org, you can go to AA online intergroup. You can find every 15 minutes somewhere in the world, there is a meeting that is starting. You can, on Zoom. You don't even have to put up your real picture or your real name. You just sit and listen. And, I've sent folks to CODA to say, you know what? I get that this is hard. And I get that this is not what you want to hear, that you want me to say something like, well, I can do it, nothing to it. I'll just talk to them one time and they're going to change everything. And, it's hard to watch somebody you care about, especially a battle buddy, especially a shipmate who is going through what you've already been through.
Well, how do you just interrupt there a little bit, Virginia? Because I saw CODA. Can you spell that now? I'm Charlie Oscar Delta Alpha.
Say again.
How do you spell? You're saying CODA.
CODA, Charlie Oscar Delta Alpha.org.
Copy that. All
so
right.
that stands for Codependence Anonymous.
Okay, thank you.
Amazing 12-step program. Not even known by a lot of addiction professionals. I think they do an amazing job. There's a 12-step group for everything. They're incredible. The 12-step community is freaking inspirational. I really, really love working with those folks. But yeah, coda.org. It is, it's hard when we, for me, I specialize in military mental health. And I really specialize in war crimes. So in my military life, I'm an Arabic speaker and I'm a trained interrogator. And so there's a lot to that. And,
is that is that bit of information kind of, do you spell that out a little bit in your book?
I talk about it a lot in the blog.
Okay.
So you can go to thesoldiersblog.org. I talk about it. I talk about it in podcasts. It's not really relevant because within the book, we're talking about what PTSD is, what it isn't. So I would get the Soldier's Guide to PTSD if you were going in for like a C&P exam, a compensation and pension exam.
Oh, that's awesome right there. See, it's all good information, but to the CMP, because so Virginia, as you know, when and Kevin and I, and because you've watched it, the CMP exam, there is such an art to tell them what they need to hear and how you phrase it. And
them guys are idiots.
Say again?
Them guys are idiots.
What makes a CMP exam, and I'll just speak personally, it took me a long time, a really long time to get service connection for my own combat-related PTSD. And that is because I found it very triggering to talk about. I found the process to be almost willfully, just convoluting, just batshit, I think is the word I'm really looking for. I think
they're freaking nuts. You got to know what, oh my God, CMP, and I've been to them in person. I've been to them on the phone. And Jesus, it's a pain in the ass.
I could get PTSD from just that.
It is very triggering. And for, and I especially think of service members who are recovering from military sexual trauma, what we call MST. Military sexual trauma is very rarely reported within a unit, and we know that. And so the VA is encouraging MST survivors to come forward and get a CMP exam for military sexual trauma, even though there's no nexus within the medical record. However, there's a way that we do it. There's a way that has to be done, and there are questions that are going to be asked about your trauma, and what your symptoms are. And so just earlier this year, we published the Soldier's Workbook for PTSD. And it's based on the Soldier's Guide to PTSD, but it is workbook based. And so that is to help a service member who is going in, especially for a C&P exam for PTSD, to be able to we go through line by line all of the different criteria for PTSD. We do a clinical to English translation because it doesn't make sense otherwise. And then we give the veteran or the service member room to write that out.
So
hit me, John.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Virginia,
No, you got it.
For those people out there that don't know what a C&P exam is, can you very quickly, if you don't mind, please tell them what that is and what it's for?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So C&P sounds like CNP, no November in there, but so C, compensation, P, pension. So what happens is, let's say, so for example, I'm going to take an example like tinnitus. So we all go through military processing. We go through MEPS. And once we get out of MEPS, presto changeo, we are 100% perfect, ready to go follow the yellow footprints or to go to basic training, whatever, pick your poison. You are good to go. You are deemed perfect. Then you spend time in the military and you're around things that go boom. You come out of the military, you leave the military, and all of a sudden you got this ringing in your ear. It's called tinnitus. Tinnitus. Some people call it tinnitus, but that's just weird. Are you raising your hand because you hear the beeping? Oh, you got it. You got it, brother. That's why you got your earphones in. So what we do is you go, so you come out of the military and you have tinnitus. Now we know that before you went in the military, you didn't have tinnitus because you went through MEPS. And then after you get out of the military, you've got the ringing in your ear. So what you do is you put in a request for compensation and pension. For compensation, meaning that military broke my ears, I got ringing in my ears, and I need to be compensated for it. So you will go to a compensation and pension exam. So this is a hearing test, and in which someone will ask you, do you have ringing in your ears? And you say, yes, I do. And lo and behold, it is connected to your service. So that's service connected. That means that what I am experiencing now, the ringing in my ears that I'm experiencing today, is connected to things that go boom while I was in the military. It's connected to my service. Now I'm using this in a really simple example because it's really
that's perfect.
When we're talking about mental health, it gets complicateder and worser. So we are trying to connect it back to our service. So that's what we mean by service connected. So then we get a rating from that compensation and pension exam. For tinnitus, it's 10%, which is like $470 a month, meaning that you are now compensated $470 a month, 10% for your service connected condition that you experience today. So then fast forward to something like PTSD. And I want to take the case of military sexual trauma, not to, so it's a trigger warning, but because it is so damn complicated, what a compensation and pension examiner. So this is an examiner. So this is someone like me. So this is a licensed mental health professional at the PhD level. At the PhD level, who is asking you questions about your current state of PTSD, your current symptoms. Because remember, the symptoms that I'm experiencing now have to be connected to what happened in my service for it to be service connected. Mm-hmm. So the questions that are asked in a C&P exam, we talk about that about this line by line in the Soldier's Guide to PTSD, and certainly in the workbook.
That's huge. I greatly appreciate it, and keep on going. This is great. So
it's so important, John, because this shit ain't rocket surgery. We
tell that to the VA,
brother. We teach 18-year-olds how to fix fighter jets. We can certainly teach you what PTSD is and what it's not and what the symptoms are. Veterans are incredibly intelligent human beings. What our book does, what the Soldier's Guide to PTSD does that other books don't do, is it's by a soldier for a soldier. It is written from me to you. So we use common everyday soldiers language to explain what this is. I had a great NCO, John, who you actually remind me a lot of, who used to always
I was an NCO, so okay. Hopefully this was a good person.
He used to always say to me, Cruse, are you picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah.
You picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah.
And I love that check-in, because what we do when it comes to PTSD and depression and anxiety, moral injury and suicide is we put a lot of shit out there, but no one is picking up what we're putting down. That's kind of the point. Hip pocket training is so that people are picking up what we're putting down.
Hip pocket training. That's interesting.
Hip pocket training, brother. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? And so in the Soldier's Guide to PTSD, we talk about what we call criterion alpha. So criterion is one, criteria is plural, because when you're talking to your mental health professional or to a C and P examiner, I want you to sound smart. And so we need you to know the jargon and know the lingo. So they're going to ask you, what's your criterion alpha? What is your trauma? And you're going to have to name it, which means that you're someone who goes in for a C and P exam, not C and P. I need to articulate better writ large, but especially when it comes to that, is a C and P examiner is going to ask you, what did you experience in your service?
Yeah, and they're going to ask it to you in about 15 different ways, the same damn question.
Perhaps.
And you got to say again?
Perhaps.
Yeah. My experience.
Yeah. And hopefully, unfortunately, there's really no standard, there is a standard outline to ask what PTSD is, but if the first time that you're ever talking about being raped is with a C and P examiner, and oftentimes it is, can we just be real about that? That's going to be a traumatic event that is going to be re-triggering. Then the C and P examiner is going to ask you about your intrusion symptoms, criterion Bravo, your avoidance symptoms. It's going to ask you about re-experiencing. It's going to ask you about nightmares, flashbacks. It's going to ask you about hallucinations. And we talk very frankly in the Soldier's Guide to PTSD about each of those criteria. And it's important. So like, for example, I've never personally seen a case of PTSD without hallucinations. And we need to talk about that and be very honest about it, because anybody who watches TV knows that when we have hallucinations, that means that we're hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, feeling things that aren't there, that are not there. We know that if we say that to a therapist, perhaps, or to the wrong therapist or to a doctor, that it's a hop, skip, and a jump to the tinfoil hat and maybe the padded room.
Damn.
But here's the thing. I've never seen a case of PTSD without hallucinations. And PTSD is an extremely logical disorder. It's extremely logical because our brain really has only two jobs. Number one is to keep us safe, keep us alive, one foot in front of the other. And your brain's done its job because you're here, you're yapping with me. And second, and a very far second, is to make meaning, whether we have all the information or not. I say again, whether we have the information or not. So when it comes to our brain keeping us alive, fill in the blank, John, stay alert. Stay alive. Yeah, I'm up. They see me.
Get the fuck down.
Get down. Okay. So we, stay alert, stay alive. Our brain knows how to keep us alive. So when we're trying to relax, rest, have sex, masturbate, play video games, do something relaxing, our brain will say to us, whoa, 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 hold on, Virginia. Perhaps you forgot that the world is a really dangerous place and everybody's trying to schwack us. Let me remind you by giving you the scent of your attacker's cologne or the taste of moon dust or hearing somebody calling your name or a manufactured gunshot sound.
I know that Kevin and we've talked to many folks on this podcast, and PTSD, we all know it's a real thing, but we also know that Uncle Sam will want to say that it's all in your head. No, it's not. That stuff that was in the air, i.e. the sarin or the PB tabs or a conglomeration of other things that we're exposed to, the thoughts don't leave us, but the stuff in our bodies ain't leaving us either. So understanding and trying to accept what we're feeling is a big deal, but it ain't the only deal. I can't control what's going on in my system, you know? So, I mean, because I know, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, we know that they will PTSD obviously clearly is a real thing, but it is not the only thing.
Well, you're adding it on top of the PTSD. It isn't just PTSD. It's people with neuropathy, fibromyalgia, digestive system problems. All that, along with the PTSD, makes it worse.
Yes. Yeah.
And not being believed.
Not being believed.
Yeah. There you go.
10 times worse than all of it combined.
Yeah, that institutional betrayal is such a kick in the teeth because, you know, what PTSD does is it changes our fundamental belief system. And there's an evidence-based treatment for PTSD called cognitive processing therapy. The big idea behind that is to think about what we're thinking about. And what we know about PTSD is it changes our fundamental belief system about ourselves, about other people, and about the world writ large. And we might believe that the world is not a safe place, or that, you know, no one's ever believed me before, or every organization that is, you know, every organization that is large is going to go out of its way to disenfranchise me because look at what happened in my past. I mean, there are really good reasons for that. And the therapy methods are to help us get our disordered stress reactions back in order. Because you're right, Sean, feelings are not facts. We know that. But how do we get those feelings? How do we right size what we're experiencing so that we can get on with our walking, talking, everyday life? Because that's what we deserve. That's what every veteran deserves, is to be loved and honored and respected and valued and cherished, truly, to be able to get on with our lives. So how do we right size these feelings? And you're right, saying, oh, it's all in your head, not helpful. You know, that toxic positivity, you know, oh, you know, every cloud has this silver light. Shut up. You really, you know, that is not helpful. It is not helpful. What is helpful is understanding my symptoms so that I can know, is this normal or am I going legit batshit?
Thank you.
Is this normal?
There ain't nothing normal about some of the shit that we've all dealt with. That shit ain't normal.
But it isn't just with us. I mean, you've been over there 3 times. Mm-hmm. Just because I don't know if you're experiencing any things that we're experiencing, but I mean, I don't think I've ever met anybody more positive than what you are. I can honestly say that. And God, I wish you were my therapist whenever I got out of the military, because I would have went home and said, y'all can believe my therapist. It's freaking awesome. No, but seriously, I mean, you need to run the VA.
think they might disagree. with
The
that, Kevin.
counseling. No, I'm dead serious. They need to put somebody in charge like you in the therapy part of it as up front, being in charge.
Well, thank you for saying so, Kevin. I won't lie. I take my shit unbelievably seriously because I've lived it. And I know I went from, I mean, man, I was drinking in Europe and other Europeans were like, oh shit, girl, you might need to slow down. I mean, I was not okay.
That's bad when the Europeans are telling you to slow down.
Mercy. I was chronically suicidal.
No.
I chronically, there wasn't a day that went by that I did not think of ending my life. And I used thinking about suicide as a coping mechanism. And here's the truth is just like drugs or alcohol, every coping mechanism works until it doesn't. Works until it doesn't. I told myself, I'm just thinking about it. I'm just thinking about, my letter that I'm going to write, or who's going to show up to my memorial service, or who do I want to blast in a last, FU Facebook post. It's like, I'm just thinking about it, but I'm not going to really do it.
I would.
But here's the thing about using, and it feels good. We need to be honest about that. And, in the Soldier's Guide to PTSD, we talk about suicide and suicidality very honestly, because I've thought about it and I have very seldom come across any veterans who haven't. And we need to stop pretending that that's not a thing. Cut the bullshit. And we need to be very real about talking about suicide. When we think about suicide, it helps. It relieves a pressure. It relieves a pressure. So think about the brain as kind of a continuum, So on this side, I've got thoughts that I don't want to feel. So I've got things like hate, loathing, fear, shame, guilt. And in the middle, I've got all these middle feelings, like I'm okay, I'm ambivalent, whatever. Then over here, I've got all these feelings that I want to feel. I want to feel happy and joyful and rainbows and sprinkles and unicorns and shit, right? So here's the idea. When it comes to PTSD, and this is criterion Charlie, this is what we call avoidance. When it comes to PTSD, we will go, remember, PTSD, unbelievably logical. We go way, way out of our way not to think of anything that reminds us of our trauma. Not watching the news, not going on Facebook, not going people, places, things. We will go way out of our way. And the big idea is very logical. We want to avoid all these shitty feelings I don't want to feel. We just want to feel these middle feelings and things I do want to feel, because that makes sense.
Well, let me ask you this. When we don't want to watch the shit that's going on in the Ukraine, but yet there's a part of us that wants to watch it and unfuck it, how do you how do you unfuck it, so it makes sense? The civilian over there, they don't get it. They can't get it. They didn't don the uniform. Okay. If they have a husband or a wife, a partner, however you want to phrase it, who is in the service they're standing next by, I'm just like them. No, you're not. You can empathize. You didn't wear the uniform. You don't get it. Is that an unfair statement? Be honest.
I'm letting her answer that.
That's what I'm asking.
Maybe. It's like, I don't have to drive, a 1988 Toyota Corolla to know how to drive a car. I think when it comes to trauma, all right, you want me to say something ugly? I'll say it. I think trauma comparison's kind of shitty. And I think shitty people do it. So I think that there's enough trauma to go around.
So be honest, is that what I just did?
Maybe I'm being honest with you. Just let me finish. So when it comes to trauma comparison, that is when we say my trauma is more traumatic than your trauma.
Okay.
My experience is more traumatic than your experience. And, I'm going to be honest with you. I never hear this outside of military communities. So, for example, I never go to, say, battered women's shelter and hear things like, girl, you think your husband beat you up? Well, my husband put me in the hospital 4 times. They don't say that because that's fucked up, because it's fundamentally not helpful to anyone. It's just shitty. And it has an unintended second and third order effect of diminishing someone's experience and making them not want to seek help. Now, let's bring it back to the military community. I do hear a lot of trauma comparison within our community. You only went to Iraq, Virginia? Well, I went to Iraq and Afghanistan. Oh my God. You were in the Gulf War. I was in a real war. And I know you guys have heard that.
Oh, yeah.
You guys were in this, well, you don't know what it's like to get spit on at the airport. It's like, whoa. And then even, you got blown up once. Well, I got 3 TBIs. It's like, whoa.
Trauma comparison. That's
interesting. Can we all agree that trauma is shitty? That all trauma is awful. But here's why I think trauma comparison is shitty. There is an unintended second and third order effect. Just like when that colonel said, Virginia, we all know that women don't serve in combat. In one phrase, he dismissed 3 deployments and just diminished my experience. He even diagnosed me with a personality disorder, which is unbelievably shitty and hard to shake.
Did you hit him?
I was escorted from the building.
Okay. I like that idea.
But I see this a lot within the military community. And we don't have to compare our traumas to say, what happened to you is awful and it is not okay. And I had a trauma experience awful, and it was also awful and not okay. And we both deserve to heal from this. And there are evidence-based treatments to do that. Let's talk about it.
No, I appreciate that answer. That's good, because the other day I was watching something on the news, and they talk about, for example, this person had 2 deployments. This person had 3 deployments to the Gulf or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why does it have to be comparing the number of deployments? So I appreciate the honesty and trauma comparison. That is okay. Now
let me be straight, John.
It's huge.
John, so, I want to be super clear. I don't think anybody is intentionally being malicious when they do it. I want to be super clear about that. I don't think anyone intends to be shitty. I think when your experience is not being believed, for especially like Gulf War and illness, Jesus God, when your entire experience is not being believed or having your experience diminished, this is a very natural thing to do, to put up that ego defense mechanism to say, you know what? Well, I experienced this too. Well, this was me too. That's normal. I don't think anybody is being intentional when they compare. But I think it's when we can look at ourselves with a little more insight and we can take a knee and say, you know what? I understand why I'm doing that, because frankly, I haven't been believed before. But I also now I understand what that second and third order effect is and how it's affecting other people. And I'm going to choose to stop from now on.
That's great. I like that. I do want you to clarify something for me, though, on one thing. Oh, yeah, this is a good one. And I hope my wife is going to listen to this. But is it a bad mistake if you tell your wife the best 4 years of your life was in the military?
Oh.
Say again?
Oh, God, you don't make me say it again. Is it really bad to tell your wife that the best 4 years of your life was in the military? Help me out on this. I want to get out of the doghouse.
I think that's between you and your wife. I think it's pretty.
You're supposed to be on my side.
It's pretty individual. It's pretty individual, brother.
Well,
You
I
know,
tell her that because it's the bond. It is. It's the bond that you have with your military brothers and sisters.
it
I
is.
mean, you and your wife have. I mean, my wife's my best friend. Easiest person I can talk to. But back then, you relied on them for survival. You relied on them because you were so homesick.
Excuse me.
I mean, you relied on them for everything. And so I said it. I'll be honest with you. I said it. And
Go
I
over,
was,
bro.
oh boy, did it go. No, 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 no. I still hear about it. It's like 10 years ago. And now I tell her, man, the best 20 years of my life was being married to her.
You kiss ass.
No, but I mean, it is. I don't think. Now, this is what I will say. For people who haven't been in the service, service members, almost like a fireman and a police officer, it's a special bond. You hold a bond with them. I mean, that is very special. And you'll always have them in your hearts, your prayers, and your thoughts. And it's just different. And I don't know what it is.
I agree wholeheartedly. And Virginia, thank you so much for you've given a lot of information, a lot of solid information about PTSD. And I've written down a lot of things. The trauma comparison, because I just did trauma comparison, stating what I said, making the comment about you didn't use the uniform, you can't, and so as my wife would say, call a spade a spade. You corrected me, and I appreciate that because that's solid, useful information. As your book is, and it's no bullshit information, and that's what we all need.
I like that. I love the name of it. When you were reading it, I love the name. Hold that book up again.
Oh, so it's called The Soldier's Guide to PTSD, and the subtitle is How to No Shit Reclaim Your Life.
I like that.
And it looks like an Army FM. That was the point. Yeah, we got a field manual for this. There's just got to be an easier way. And we have a trauma, a Heal from Trauma series. We have the Soldier's Guide to PTSD. We have the Soldier's Workbook. And coming out on August 26th, we have Acknowledge and Heal, which is a women's focus guide to PTSD that'll be coming out. And also we have a version in Spanish that will be coming out.
That's good.
Because a lot of service members and their family members.
And Kevin, you're gonna have this as a link, Kevin.
Oh yes, very much. You'll send me all the information, correct?
You better believe it. And folks can find the book on Amazon,
right.
Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. We're there. It's such a privilege to talk with service members and to talk with veterans like y'all. And John, you're singing in my heart because I am a former trauma comparer. I don't want you to think I'm throwing stones.
No. I appreciate it. No, I mean, it's solid. I mean,
I value you taking
very gently corrected me, and I appreciate that.
Oh, I'm throwing stones, damn it. I'm sorry. I like throwing stones.
Hey, if I'm freaking wrong, tell me I'm wrong and prove me I'm wrong. Yeah. And you did that, and I appreciate that.
But that's one thing about it. But if you don't know,
yeah,
that's what this show is about.
Yeah,
it's every day you should learn something.
Mm-hmm. And we've got to lead the way too.
Yeah, and I think that you should have a very booked calendar. That's all the hell I can say. I'm just saying you should.
Well, we do have the book available on audio too. I forgot to mention that. I don't know about y'all, but I cannot remember the last time I read a book. I listen, because not everybody has time to read, but everyone has a commute. And so I even listen to journal articles and textbooks on, I listen to them, I convert everything in. And so our, the Soldier's Guide to PTSD is also available in audiobook for those of us who are a
thank
little
God.
more
I don't
audio than visual, which I am.
read.
And I promise
I
it's
love
not me
audio,
reading
so.
it. It's not me reading it. It's Kelly Tager is an amazing voice actress. And if I could sound like her, oh my gosh, I'd be so thrilled.
Well, if somebody ever writes a book about me, I want, one of them. Who's the guy that did Lion King? What's his
James
name?
Earl Jones?
Yeah, I want him to be my voiceover. I think we sound a lot alike. Okay, maybe not, but
I want Samuel L. Jackson with all the F-bombs.
Yeah, oh yeah. might be like Eddie Murphy or somebody like that.
Some people just got a voice that you just can't stop listening to.
Right.
That's what pulls you in.
Right. But please send me the link that after we're done. Send it
Absolutely, my pleasure.
To the email. I really appreciate you. And when your new book comes out, also I would like for you to come back on and maybe do a session about the women and the
Sure.
and PTSD, because I think that's the subject that's not touched on enough. I do. I really do.
I think that's a really good idea. Yeah.
I would love for you, when you come out with that book, I want you to send me a message and say, Kevin, I'm going to come back on and I'm going to touch base, primarily because we can learn, us guys. And there's a lot of guys that need to freaking learn.
Yeah.
I
Every
know.
minute of every day.
Yeah, look at her. She's like, yeah, I know. I mean, I just like the way she does it. Yeah, I know.
It's co-written with Katie Salidas, who is an amazing author in her own right. And what we did with Acknowledge and Heal is we have a lot of vignettes that are from women of all different walks of life who anonymously donated their stories to illuminate a lot of the things that we talk about, that we don't talk about within the Soldier's Guide. So we are talking about things like gaslighting and spousal rape and institutional betrayal. We do, talk about that also, and things that are much more women focused. Most importantly, it doesn't have all the F-bombs and probably, it's definitely for a kinder, gentler audience.
But one thing about it here is I know there's a lot of spouses and everybody that listens to this program. I think it would be a good thing for the program is to come back on.
Love that. Especially
coming up with like military, wives. I mean, there's husbands out there that, their spouses are military and everything that could relate to it. But I do, please let me know.
Absolutely. And, and thank you so much. And I'll make sure that I get you all of our links. I invite your listeners to join us on our Facebook page, The Soldier's Guide. We're on Instagram and we're on the TikTok. Feeling very hip and young with the TikTok, thanks to amazing Barbie McRae, who does all of our social media. She's phenomenal. She's just a phenomenal human being and writer and. So I'd invite your folks to come and follow us, thesoldiersblog.com, and to check out our book. And again, it's the Soldier's Guide to PTSD: How to Know Shit, Reclaim Your Life. We also have the Soldier's Workbook, which is great for your C and P exams. And then you can pre-order your copy of Acknowledge and Heal, coming out on August 26th with Katie Salidas.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. And,
solid information, Virginia. We so much appreciate you coming on. I don't know about Kevin.
My eyes are wide open on
learned
that.
A lot.
Yes. And I definitely, I hope you keep listening to the program and keep up with us. And let us know how you're doing. But hey, Virginia, thank you. John, thank you too. And to all the listeners, thank y'all for listening. I
Thank you
appreciate it.
so
Thank you all.
much, team.
Y'all please go to my website at goal4sideeffects.wordpress.com or email me at kevinsimon@goal4sideeffects.com. And please help support this podcast and the veterans by clicking on the link below. Thank you for your support.